There is a minimum spend of 2%. They're mandating it. But if you want to go on your own volition, you can go ahead and
That is only a minimum.
But the guiding principle is that you're not just like that end of 31st March just to close your books, identifying an NGO, transferring some funds there. You have to have a clear vision, identify the NGO that's having a similar vision, has the expertise, spent those 3-4 years having the relevant experience in that domain, and therefore you're tying up with that NGO and have a monitoring mechanism to ensure that the funds are being utilized or channelized in the right manner.
Yes, you will have to mention the specific projects. Yeah. You will have to mention the specific projects in your report. And your CSR policy doesn't say, doesn't provide a broad base of what you are going to spend on. It also you should also in your CSR policy say how you are going to monitor. It is for you to monitor. It is for you to have a proper mode in place to monitor how the CSR amount is spent. But you will have to have something in your CSR policy.
But I think even sadly, it's not equal tax treatment as on the state. Only a couple of entities mentioned in Schedule 7 get the exemption. For example, I think contribution to Prime Minister's relief fund and another entry. Only these are the ones as on this state which get the exemption. So the government is considering getting an amendment to ensure that there's an equal tax treatment.
The rural electrification program and many other.
Because if the tax exemption is only for 2 or 3 entries, then the companies will obviously not want to, assuming they want to go on cost cutting basis, they will not go for any activities otherwise. They will go for any activity which is giving them benefits and tax exemption. So till we get the tax treatment, these are the only 2 entries which are enjoying the exemption.
There's one other tax, the second entry she was talking about is actually pretty wide because it talks about contributing to projects and schemes that are done with a charitable purpose. So a lot of CSR activities could actually fit into that because the provision itself is worded in very wide language, wide terms. So, but apart from that, as of now, like she said, we do not have a CSR deduction or CSR exemption under the head.
Next question.
The question was like, how is it beneficial for budding NGOs? That answer, my colleagues have already answered to. You need a minimum 3 year of track record. So a budding NGO is not beneficial.
But without the money, how do I get a track record?
No, so you.
Sorry, not your answer, but.
I know, but see.
Bootstrap it. Yeah.
So the intention, the idea behind this is you need an expertise in that field. See, a company, corporate is ready to invest, it's ready to allocate its fund, and it wants to spend that fund for a specific purpose, and they want an expertise in this field. For example, if it goes into the wrong hand, and the resources are not utilized properly, the end achievement, what you receive at the end is not what you intended to use the funds for. So that's the basic reason why government thought giving a 3-year track record is that NGO or that specialized agency will have an expertise in that field, and they'll know how to spend that money, and they'll in turn guide the corporates to schedule their scheme or schedule their activities. So this is the reason why budding NGOs, they don't have an opportunity, but of course with the 3 years expertise in specific fields or in and around those areas, then it will be helpful for corporate and also for NGO to collaborate and work and achieve the achieve what they decided, what they wanted to.
I have a question. Is it decided by the government or by the corporates itself?
It's for the corporates to see.
No, they themselves have made the policies that we have to give the CSR to the NGOs who have already been working.
The Companies Act, the law itself says that you'll have to have track record. Rule 4, I guess, of the CSR rules.
That is why is it legalized, or a company, every company has its own rules, right?
The rule says you have to give.
See, that's what happens. Even before the law was enforced, your company will have a set of rules, so you'll be following it. Now, what happens is like when the law, you have to go with the law. So you've been practicing for a very long time, but now what the law says is something mandatory which you have to do. What you're doing is okay. You can do more than what the law requires, but you have to at least do what the law says for you, so that you have to follow it.
But don't mistake me with this question. The law, actually, the government doesn't have any law that even the CSR could do or do not. But they have a very good law that they have to do only with the 3 years of NGOs, right?
It's that is from the
No, I'm just asking.
that is from the perspective of corporates to ensure that they are safe. Tomorrow, there should be safeguard both sides. It's like there are pros and cons.
It's in the safe
We have to
zone,
ensure
actually.
that the corporates are also not losing out, and as well as NGOs are benefited from the transaction. So keeping that in mind, they've ensured that since a huge amount is being spent, might as well have safe checks to ensure that it's spent for the right cause.
There are enough and more NGOs which have misappropriated the funds. It's been directed across different channels.
Yeah, that is
So,
why the criteria involved, building a reputation. Like they say, Rome was not built in a day. Even it counts for NGO as well. They'll see what have you done in the previous track records, what is the level of contribution that you have given to the society, what are your achievements, your
Yeah, I
reputation
want
in the
to just
market.
ask whether the contribution or the project, the weightage of the project,
The
that is for how
effectiveness.
much budget they have done the project.
No, it is the quality of the work they look into.
That's
They
what-
don't see the money that is being given to you. They're seeing whatever little money goes or doesn't go, your
The
effective,
weightage of the work they have given.
your contribution to the society. Basically, your task is implementation of the funds you receive from the corporates. How good
That's
you are
what-
at it, or how good you are at execution of activities. That is what is being looked into. So your reputation, your performance of how you well manage the financial resources, all that is being looked into.
Because there may be some questions, right, that you haven't done any project for more than 5 lakhs. Then how could I give you 1 crore?
it's for the corporate to take that
Yeah,
risk
that's
on
what-
you.
Yeah.
One more clause. Is ATG mandated for NGOs for CSR? For NGOs, you said 3 years they should have track record. Is ATG also mentioned as one of the clauses? Having
Tax
ATG.
Tax exemption.
It's
ATG
tax deduction.
Okay, Income Tax Act.
Yeah.
That gives benefit
For
to
the
the
NGOs,
For credibility of NGOs, I'll elaborate what I mean. Usually corporates ask, do you have an ATG? Does the NGO have an ATG exemption, tax exemption? Which actually benefits individuals, but does it apply for corporates?
yes,
How?
because it gives tax benefit to me because I have ATG return from you. Otherwise, it will be going to you as expense or where I'm showing as the expense rather than tax benefit. So when I'm giving any contribution for NGOs, I expect a letter from them.
As an individual.
As an individual or as an
No,
organization?
as an organization, because there is a clause in corporates also.
I think it's more
It's there.
individual than
On individual, they will for their the personal income tax,
Yes,
but
yes.
for corporates also they are demanding. Some companies especially.
But it's not a mandate, I guess. Is it a mandate?
sorry,
Is it a mandate or it is not? Like 3 years track record is fine, but
No,
Sorry,
the
just to
CS
clarify, ATG does not give a corporate tax exemption because whatever you give is given post-tax. Individually, you get tax exemption. However, corporates ask you because in their mind, they see ATG as some credibility that, if I ask my employees to give contribution, they will get the benefit of ATG, right? But ATG does not apply to a corporate. Corporate doesn't get tax exemption. So we have to be very clear with that. They're two different things.
Okay, so with that, the questions that we have received, we've covered it, but
No, I
Apart
don't
from
think
that-
some of the questions that we had raised is not addressed. We asked about the transparency of the CSR funds that's been allocated.
Yes, the transparency part, that's what I said. You will have to prepare a report of what you have spent.
No, that is after spending, but before spending, at the beginning of the year, okay, this is the amount that we have allocated for CSR, and NGOs can just come and apply.
The amount is quantified. Since the amount is
Usually it's
quantified,
not
Is that a
mentioned.
process? Yeah.
Usually companies call for CSR partnership, but they don't mention the amount. They just ask. I think the
Website
number of
management.
pages are like 40
CSR
rupees,
policy.
nothing less. But then after asking all this, they don't disclose how much money is available. So it should be a
What does the
transparent
law say
process.
about it?
no,
What
but
does the
then,
law say?
but then the thing is that you need not spend the entire amount for one particular project and on one engaging one particular NGO. The company can spend that 2% of their profit on various issues, on various aspects
Yeah,
involving
that's
many
fine, that's fine.
NGOs.
But then, is there a clause saying that the NGOs have to say this is what is available for the NGOs? You can just
No,
and appeal. You know, like when we appeal, when we apply for grant funding, we know what the budget is. You know, and thereby we can just float a proposal.
We know the limit.
accordingly.
We know what are the requirements. But in CSR,
The law does not say that. Law
No, it's
does
a
not-
partnership at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Corporates
partnership
can
also
have.
holds good in grant
See,
funding.
the
So-
law only says you can
Yeah.
tie up with X, Y, and Z. It doesn't say how you tie up with what amount. It doesn't explicitly mention the criterias and the amount involved. They don't go into explicit. They're very. It's just like an prima facie view that the companies are at an option to tie up with so and so sources. They don't go into depth in dealing with how to go about that. It's just silent as to that. I think slowly, since it's new legislation, as when amendments come, I think with suggestions given to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, in fact by NGOs, it's a very good platform wherein since you raise these concerns and it's not been addressed in the legislation, it's a very good thought that you have raised. You can actually address these issues to the ministry so that a bill and subsequently an amendment can actually be passed. Because they are very good concerns raised from the viewpoint of an NGO.
because some corporates they just ask for details, but then we don't know what's the limit. It's like we are clueless whether it's a big, huge money that we are aiming at, or is it a small amount.
And to what size
To
we
what
should
size
plan.
we should plan. Sometimes there's no response.
Practicalities.
Absolutely. It's been really tough. We submit all the details, we make ourselves absolutely transparent, but from the other side it's like silence sometimes, which is not very a good partnership.
And also, they don't give you a timeline as to when they will respond at times. I think we've also gone through that with you.
Exactly.
Is that they say they want to partner, but they don't say when. So that's something that has no.
Sajna, I could give you some insights on the corporate side of the view.
Okay.
We would be assessing maybe more than one NGO, right, to partner with. And we may eventually go with one or two NGOs.
Okay.
And of course, it's appropriate for them to have informed you whether they're proceeding with you or not, and a tentative number that they have in mind. Certainly, it works, but I don't want to make a commitment right now because I don't know whether I'll be working with you at all, or will that entire money go into something that my own team will work directly with. Like for example, we work with organizations, colleges directly. We look for rural students, we look for their further studies and all of that, and we tie up directly with tier 1 colleges. So we just pick some 5 students and we say, let's say 10 lakhs per year is the fee, and we'll cover 5 students or 2 students depending on what we want to do in that particular year. So that's how it works. And sometimes we see some meritorious students and we add one more. That also happens. So it all depends on how interactive that the committee or the people are. It is sad, I agree,
We're
but
talking
maybe
about
it's
multi-year and high funding projects.
it's more
We're not talking
to
about
talk to
small
the corporate
projects.
affairs team to say if they can empanel you, then it's easier to work with you people, rather than do their own due diligence and then start working with you, because again the question of scale and other things starts coming in, saying you've done only 5,000 rupees, how can you expect 5 lakhs as contribution? So all of that starts coming in. Maybe a suggestion to the corporate office ministry should definitely help, especially from an
No,
environment
there are
perspective.
corporates who are very, very specific. They say that the cost per care should be, you say 300 rupees per person, and scale up to any level. So that gives us barely an idea of how much we can go and what are the region geographies they are interested in.
Maybe you are
Yeah.
dealing with companies those are not mandated with the law. Because those companies which are mandated with the law to
No, I'm talking about big companies. I'm not talking about
no,
small companies.
but then law requires them to quantify and provide what are the projects.
So even though there is discretion to the corporates to allocate their funds in different channels, there should be an overall CSR policy which will be updated on their website. So maybe that is one of the guidelines that you can take. But as of now, as the law stands, there is no way an NGO can probably apply or ask the corporate to give their what funds they.
There's no transparency clause. That's what we are trying to understand.
No, there's no
This is
declaration,
state-
stated direction or a vision from a CSR perspective today. Very soon, maybe 2-3 years down the line, all corporates, you will find them on their websites if this rule is going to be implemented. 3 years hence, I'm sure there will be a direction, and you can tie up with these particular corporates because there is synchrony in both of your objectives, and therefore you can start working with them.
Is there any other questions from the NGOs?
Is there a policy that the criteria is getting lowered for mandating CSR, because currently it's 5 crores profit, or what is the top line number?
1,000
crore
turnover and
turnover.
500 net worth.
500 crore net worth. So effectively that rules out so many companies, right? I mean if the problem with that statement is that it limits everybody goes to only the same set of companies. They're the only ones who get mandated for CSR. I mean, if they open it up or they reduce the turnover down to say 100 crores or even 50 crores, because everybody wants to contribute. But till you mandate it, it's not going to happen.
No, initially there was probably an apprehension with the government that the companies go to court saying that you cannot mandate us to spend the sum of money on CSR. They may probably end up getting a declaration from the Supreme Court or the High Courts that their fundamental right to carry out business is spoiled or transgressed by the government. Therefore, probably the government had to be cautious so that it had to try with certain companies which will not complain of having to part with 2% of their profits. So that might be one of the reasons why the government initially had to try out with such companies.
No, but even then, they're talking about an allocable surplus. There is a profit, and then there is a money that you can allocate over the average of the last 3 years of profits. So, what if I make a loss in that particular year? Big deal. There was some money of the previous year. I add to that, and then the next year, all of that. So, I don't think it would be transgressing on their rights to do business in India. Definitely not. I agree. I mean, they could have lowered, but they just took the easy way out
Exactly.
to say, chill, I just pass the law. I'm saying I'm very conscious, socially aware, and that's about it.
In the near future, it won't be surprising when actually they lower the bar
Yeah,
and include other
they should.
companies as well. And
Because that's the only way they'll help. There are only two issues in my opinion. One is the bar is too high. Second is that there are companies who are using CSR to actually gain business advantage. Okay, so question then is that if I'm going to say, look, I'm not, it's not really like me, but if you say Pepsi there and say Pepsi says I'm also, looking at water management. In some way, you're promoting it as an extension. I'm taking out water and I'm putting back water. There's a fine line, because you're using it as a marketing gimmick in some ways to drive sales. Right? I don't know whether that is whether it's right or wrong. I don't know from a law perspective.
That's why the hidden agenda, the benefits that exercising the projects and the CSR gets you is publicity. You don't um, ask for it, but then you
No,
automatically
you can
come into
always
the
say,
limelight.
but if you are somehow linking it to the business you're running, and see, you can always say publicity, yes, I take care of 1,000 children education. It's my, it's a goodwill gesture, it is our CSR activity, fully appreciate that. Take as much publicity as possible. But if you are using it in a way to address either a business challenge or to promote your business, not the CSR, then it becomes a grey area.
There is one check on that. That is the CSR activity that you undertake cannot be something that you do in the ordinary course of your business. So let's say you are a toothpaste manufacturing company or soap manufacturing company, and you go to the rural areas where they don't have access to these products, and you sell the toothpaste and soaps that you manufacture. That would not come under
But
CSR.
it's not only about selling. Say, the very same example I would like to give on social perspectives. Say the Schedule 7 says the sports activities have to be promoted. Say that is one such clause in Schedule 7. And then you are a company which manufactures, say, sports shoes. You cannot give away some sports shoes free of cost, choosing one slum for those children to be benefited, and then claim that you have done something what law mandates. So when you do something that you have already been doing in a normal course of business, you cannot call it CSR. The law is very clear on that point.
So what about volunteering? So they say taking an amount of time from your employees. Irrespective, they should work 8 hours a day. So they say that this is like we give 6 hours a day. That's fine, is it? 2 hours a day will be given to a CSR employee volunteering. So
That is for the company to decide.
CSR is even the rules specify it should be a continuing program. It can't be a 1 day or 1 month allocated job. You should keep in mind the policy, that is the program you wish to keep as a CSR objective, and then you should allocate funds to that. So it's a long-term goal. It's like, say it goes over months or years. So you don't take one activity like which can get done in a day. Like you're talking about work hours of a certain individual or voluntary work, that does not constitute a CSR at all. It's a
One-off
long-term.
doesn't work at all.
okay.
It has to be a sustained over a period of 1 to 2
Program.
years. It has to be a program where volunteerism is also involved. So it's not just about paying money and saying, okay, I've done my 2% and therefore I'm off the radar. Doesn't work that way.
Little differently asked, there are companies that say that we do have a CSR policy and this is volunteering. So what they do is they say that employee hours counts as money. So if this person worked for 8 hours, he would generate X amount of revenue. So we are letting him or her do 2 hours of volunteering work. So technically it comes as this amount of revenue will be lost by the company, and that goes towards our CSR.
Then I'll send all my CEOs to the
So is
cover.
that legal?
No, but that's the thing. All of that would not be counted as CSR because you need to have a CSR committee which has a policy, and then you work with NGOs or specialized agencies, which you can have CSR staff, and those CSR staff would not be the regular staff. So the CSR staff expenditure can fall into CSR expenditure, but if you take your employee and say, okay, today you help with CSR, that doesn't work.
That's used to be, because lots of people have said that is our CSR policy, this is what we're doing. So that's
that will not work.
Okay, interesting.
But that is again possible because the actual companies mandated for CSR is so high up there that everybody else is doing their own stuff.
Okay.
So unless you're doing, like you said, 1,000 crore turnover and all that, where you will go through, you'll have a CSR committee, you'll have a CSR activity and stuff. That's why you have to bring the level down so that more companies come into the fold. That's how they're going to really help the country. Otherwise, it's not going to help.
And also the mandates to the CSR policies, right, is decided by a board.